Welcome all DCS players. Today I want to show you how to get the most from your system. By meaning the most, to get the highest FPS, best possible visual quality and playable gaming experience. There are many people I'm hearing that they want to play DCS, but they hear the DCS needs very high quality system, high-end system, best video cards or etc. It's okay, it's right. DCS has a very high load engine. It needs a high-end graphic card to reach to the utmost FPS values, but you don't need that high-end cards. There are many optimizing solutions for your system. You don't need to worry about that. You will need to focus on your settings. You will need to focus on your systems drivers and DCS settings and system video card settings. By doing that, you can get the most out of your system to play DCS, both single player or online play. Yes, you can play with your system and you can enjoy your DCS sessions by making these settings. First rule is to update your DCS files frequently. I'm using DCS Updater Launcher graphical user interface utility. You can repair, clean your DCS install and update your DCS into beta or standard version. When you try these settings at your system, you should monitor and benchmark your system. I'm using MSI Afterburner with Riva Statistics. You can set which parameters you want to see: CPU speed, CPU temperature, GPU speed, GPU temperature, memory usage, or etc. It's a free tool. You can download and install it from the MSI web page. There are some presettings at options system menu: low, medium, high and VR settings. These are some presettings. You should optimize them. Okay, let's talk on the settings and optimize them individually. First, textures. Textures are set to high, medium or low. I suggest you to set the textures to medium for the start of the test or optimize your system, because they affect your system's video cards performance so much. Start with medium, and if you see a good performance, you can raise it to high. Terrain textures again low and high, unless you have the highest capacity cards set to low, and start with the optimizing with that. High setting can affect your system's FPS so much. Because of that, you can get low FPS on low altitude flights. Civilian traffic, if you want to see some cars or lorries going around, you can set to high, but it affects your system's video usage, video capacity usage. I don't care it so much. Even I have the highest capacity card, I don't want to see so much, or I don't care. My setting is medium. Motor setting is important setting. Water setting can be set to low, medium or high. Water surface texture quality is set here. You can set to low, medium or high. I suggest you to start with the medium setting if you have, unless you have the lowest capacity card. That can affect your FPS on sea level or over sea so much. Our next setting is the visibility range. Visibility range is important setting. because it affects your video card's memory usage, and video card GPU memory access speed is very important for your FPS values. If you have a low access speed or low speed memory on your card, it drops your system's FPS value so much. Because of that, I want to suggest you to use medium setting, not the ultra setting. For heat blur, it affects your video card's performance up to 5 to 10%. For low to medium end systems, set it to low. Shadows affects your system's performance as much as the heat blur, and if you have a low end system or very low end system, set to low or flat only. This setting should be defaulted to your monitor's native resolution. You can see the resolutions you can set on your DCS gameplay. Default value is your, as I have said, monitor's native resolution. But if you see very low FPS values at your native resolution, you can downgrade your resolution to a lower value. For example, you use a wide QHD monitor and you use for example, medium capacity card like 1070. Maybe you can see low FPS values, and you can downgrade your native resolution to a lower value to see better FPS for better gameplay. This setting is the aspect ratio. I don't suggest you to change it. Let the system set it to according to the monitors. This is monitor setting. You can change the number of monitors and etc. You can see the settings here. Now this setting is your cockpit display resolution setting. This setting is very important for getting good FPS values, because your system almost always renders the cockpit textures. I suggest you to use 512 for up to medium video cards, but if you get good FPS values, you can increase to higher values. That setting is very important because, as I have said before, your system almost always renders your cockpit textures. Now we have came to a very important setting, multi-sample anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing means texture smoothing. That's a post-processing special anti-aliasing method. It takes your system up to 20% at high-end cards and up to 40% at low-end card. Because of that, you should set it to off or 2x at most up to medium cards, and you can set it to 4x at high-end cards. I don't see many difference between 2x and 4x. Because of that, I'm setting it 2x. Now talk about depth of field. You can set it to simple, bokeh or off. I'm setting as simple because it focuses on the visual focus area. Bokeh is about not focused area. This setting is related to more to VR, but I'm setting it as simple. It does not affect the FPS performance, as I can see so much. Next setting is the lens effects. You can set none, dirt, flare, dirt plus flare. Flare is when you set it to flare, you can see light spots flares. Dirt, like your focus lens is dirted. In the cockpit, you can see the difference between these settings. They are not meaningfully change the FPS. Motion blur, I set it to on. You can set it to off on low-end systems because you can see the streak of movement of moving objects. it affects your performance. Now this setting is the super sampling anti-aliasing. This setting upscales your native resolution to another higher scale, and then downscales it and shows it to your monitor. It makes your video quality better, but it taxes your FPS so much, up to 30% at for example highest capacity cards, even at that highest capacity cards. Because of that, I suggest everyone to set this to off unless they are preparing a cinematic screen video or something like that. And now this setting is the SSLR, super sampling light reflections. Super sampling light reflections is a technique that taxes your system again so much. It's about light reflections. It affects the system's performance, especially on C surface. Because of that, I suggest you to use it at off, even if you have the highest capacity cards or high capacity cards, unless you are preparing a cinematic DCS video or something like that. But of course you can try them off if you want, but you will see huge FPS drops up to 30% or something like that, and you do not feel the visual quality increase in the heat of the game. I think that's your choice. Try it and see the result. I don't think they are very useful features for online gameplay or standard gameplay for standard DCS users. Only for cinematic purposes they can be used for increase the video quality at all. Now we came to the settings which are very affected by the system's performance. I mean not only the GPU and CPU, but the system's memory, hard drive, and bus settings. These are clutter grass settings, trees visibility, preload radius, and chimney smoke density. For example, if you set preload radius so much, it should be uploaded from your hard drive to your system memory, and CPU should work on it. And trees visibility and grass. These are very affected by your system's hard drive or SSD memory speed and interactions between them. Because of that, these settings may cause stutters and low FPS. You should try these by moderate settings. Try them out, see them individually, and decide what's best for you. These are my optimized settings for my system. My video card is AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT and Intel i9 9900K working at 4.8 GHz. I'm hoping to see at about 90 FPS with these settings. We will see these settings result at FA18 module, free flight at Caucasus. It has sea and land goodly mixtured. Let's see the result. And now we are seeing the values at upper left corner. At about 90 FPS, frame time of 10-12 milliseconds, GPU temperature, CPU temperature, memory usage. What is frame time? Frame time is the time taken by system to display a frame on your screen. It must be redundant. It must be fluent. It mustn't change by the time to 12, 20, 60. When you see this, it means stutter. Whatever your FPS is, if it changes so much, you see stutters on your system. Because of that, it must be stable. Let's see. As you can see, our FPS is about 90 as we hoped, and our frame time is very stable. It does not change so much. Because of that, you shouldn't see so much stutter or no stutter at all. Why I wanted over 90 FPS from my system? Because it almost always ensures good gameplay at online and offline. If you see 90 FPS offline, you can see at about 50-60 FPS online, so you can play in fluent conditions. Now let's try out other settings from our optimized settings. For example, one of these settings is SSAA, super sampling anti-aliasing. Let's change it to 1.5, which means it multiplies the resolution by 1.5. It upscales and downscales and shows you on your monitor. It affects visual quality. Let's see the result of this SSAA settings result at your system. Our system is a high-end capacity card, but what will happen? We will see. Okay guys, do you see the FPS value? It's almost half of the first settings, optimized settings. 45, 46. It was 92 before. It affected so much, and frame time is doubled too, naturally. As you can see, this setting affects your system's performance so much. At this resolution of my monitor, White QHD, it affected my performance at half. You can play it offline, but I don't think that you can play it online with these settings. It will drop to 30s, 24s or something like that, and it will be unplayable, not fluent, not good. Because of that, you should experience your settings always at your system. As you can see, CPU is sleeping at 10%, GPU is 99%. Okay guys, now see the result of setting SSLR to on, but we are setting individually. Now we are setting SSAA to off and SSLR to on, and let's see the result of SSLR on our system. Okay guys, as you can see, FPS dropped from 90s to 70s. It's just about 20%. Again, frame time is pretty stable. It didn't affect it as much as SSAA did on our system. All these settings must be tested and experienced individually according to your system. At high-end systems, these settings affects less than medium or low-end systems, because these are working on GPU's power. If you have more powerful GPU, it will be affected less than lower cards. I prefer the FPS, so I'm disabling SSLR at my system. I cannot see the difference very well. If you see the difference, you can set it to on at your high-end settings. Now let's set both SSAA and SSLR to on and increase the force on our GPU, and let's see the result. Do you see the result? It's 34 FPS, 34 FPS. Frame time is tripled to 30s. In this setting, maybe you can play it offline, but you cannot even play it online at all. As you can see, these settings affect the performance so much. Okay guys, let's assume we have a medium capacity card and optimize our settings according to that. Let's set it to medium and see the result at our system. As you can see, 165 FPS and at about 5-6 millisecond frame time. As you can see, the texture quality is dropped from our optimized settings. Now we will optimize our settings for better quality. And now let's change some settings for better textures and better quality, and see the result of FPS drop percentage at our system. And we will talk about, for example, a medium capacity card like RX 580 or GTX 1060. How percentage they will be affected in the end with these quality settings. Now we are changed some settings for quality, and let's see the result here. As you can see, much better textures, screens in the cockpit, and surface is better than before. And as you can see, FPS is about 120. It dropped 25%. It means these settings affects the performance of our card at 25%. For example, if you get 45 FPS with RX 5080 and if apply these settings, it will be affected at about 25%. It will be dropped to 30 and 35. And with these settings, you can play your game at 30 FPS, at around 30 FPS, and it will be a fluent game play experience. Now let's assume we have a low-end card, and let's play with these low-end settings. We can even optimize our system with low-end graphics cards. We will see here, I want to mention anisotrophic filtering. That's a very important setting. You should set to 16 at high-end settings and set it to 4x or 8x according to your system's performance. It's very important for your visual quality. At low-end settings, it gives us 174 170s FPS, as you can see, but visual quality is very low. As you can see, textures, cockpit textures and ground textures are at very low settings, and they do not seem well. Now let's change some settings at our low-end settings. These settings will not affect your performance so much, but will give you better visual quality, and will give you much more satisfaction when you play with your low-end graphics card. As you can see, we are setting our anisotrophic filtering to 2x at our low-end system. As you can see, with these settings you will see better cockpit textures, and that means you optimize your system for better visual quality, and this will not affect your video card's performance up to at most 5% or something like that. For example, if you get 30 FPS, you will have 27 or 28 FPS at all. These settings will give you much better satisfaction, gameplay satisfaction. At the end, I want to say that there are hundreds of parameters that affects your system's performance: your resolution, your GPU, your CPU, your hard drive disk or SSD, your memory bandwidth. You should set these settings individually to see the results according to your system, according to your GPU capacity or CPU. Whatever we say, you should experience them individually at your system at all. Some may work at the same and some may change. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe, give your comments, and see you again. Bye.